Hi friends, I am Dr. Pratap Singh Rathod. I have done an MD in Forensic Medicine, and today we'll continue with medical aspects of injuries. In that, we'll discuss about injury report. Any case of injury is a potential medical issue. An injury report is a form of medical report giving the details of condition of the patient, solicited or for legal purposes. In any case, when an injury case comes, casualty medical officer or any other medical officer is asked to examine the case. Medical injury case should be examined without any delay at any time of day or night. All details of examination of injured person, whether admitted into a hospital or treated as an outpatient, should be entered in the accidental register. So this is accidental register should be maintained in all government or private hospitals, which consist of when the patient has come, what time it was examined, what are the type of injuries, all should be present. In this register, it is a confidential record and should be safe custody of a medical officer. And if there is a chance that this case goes to the court, this register has to be produced in the court. The doctor is required to fill in the printed form of injury or wound certificate, one copy of which has to be preserved with himself and one copy has to be given to the police officer who has brought the case. Injury report consists of preliminary report, observation, and lastly opinion. So preliminary particulars mainly includes the details of the patient. First is the serial number. So serial number includes the medical legal case number or outpatient number or anything which is related to which can be identified and in the record section. Next is the name, age, sex of the injured person and address of the person. Father's or guardian's name if in case of minor. Date, time, place of examination is very important, and this is very important in cases where the age of the injury becomes a issue. Their name and number of accompanying police constables and police station to which he belongs. So person who has brought, mainly the police constable who has brought, his identification number and police station which he belongs to be noted. Next is the name of the person who has accompanied the injured person with their address. Then a brief statement of the injured person should be about the exact nature how the injury has occurred should be recorded. This has to be recorded as alleged by the patient. So anything which he has told has to be written as alleged by the patient. So here there should not be changes, should be not be done. Whatever the patient has narrated has to be recorded as it is. Then two identification marks should be written as it is required. Any case of medical legal case or medical report, two identification marks is a must. It signifies the identification of that person. Then the person's stature, body weight, development has to be noted. Then the consent of the person has to be taken. In case if the person is more than 18 years of age, if he is less than 18 years of age, the consent of the guardian has to be taken. If the person's condition is very serious, then dying declaration should be taken. So dying declaration is a form of declaration where the person is on the deathbed, and if he narrates how his injury has occurred or who was the cause for that injury, it is a form of statement which can be taken by the medical officer. This is a basic performer of the injury report. So this is injury report is mainly given to the investigation officer, that is IO, with concerned police station. Then subject is submission of report. Then it includes the letter from which the requisition letter dated of that. Then you have to mention the name, age, sex, and then raise alleged address. Then the constable's name, his number, and police station. Then consent of the patient, and which includes the signature of the patient. Then identification marks 1 and 2. Then brief history of narrated case. So it may be absorbed, it may be person, may be fell off. So whatever the history alleged by the patient has to be recorded. The next part of the injury report is the observation. So here mainly it may be included as a tabular form. It consists of serial numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 based on number of injuries. So injury can also be clumped with based on the where the anatomy mark. Like example, if there is a injury, many injuries on the head, so head injury number 1, 2, 3 like that, or in the abdomen 1, 2, 3 like that can also be narrated. So first injury may be something like the nature of injury, size of injury, that I'll discuss in the next slides. So observation, the first part you have to observe the nature of each injury. So each injury has to be narrated. So whatever the injury from head to toe has to be noted. So nature of injury includes whether there are abrasions, contusions, or incised wound, or lacerated wound, or stab wound, burns, fracture, dislocation, etc. should be noted. A lens should be used to get an accurate idea of nature of the edges and ends of the floor. So many times it happens that laceration on the scalp may look like an inside wound. So examination with the hand lens will be very helpful to note the edges. So in case of lacerated wound, the edges will be flayed and it will not be clean cut. So if there it is a clean cut, that indicates a sharp weapon. If there are edges are ragged, that indicates that it is a blunt weapon injury. So it is very helpful to examine the edges, has to be examined by lens. Presence of any foreign materials in the wound such as metal, glass, dirt, broken point of knife, pellets, etc. has to be preserved and sent to the further examination. Next part of examination is the size, shape and direction of each injury. Each injury has to be measured with the tape and never has to be guessed. The shape of the wound, whether it is a circular wound, oval wound or triangular wound or oblique wound or any shape, the elliptical wound has to be recorded. And direction of wound, whether it is horizontal, whether it is vertically placed or whether it is obliquely placed, has to be recorded. In case of stab or firearm wounds, direction of the wound should be noted. So in case of stab wound or firearm wound which has a 3-dimension, we have to note the depth of the wound also. It can be done by, if first after stabilizing the patient, has to be measured using any soft pointed probes. Then we have to mention which part of the body it was inflicted. The exact situation of the wound has to be noted. So size and shape has to measure in like length and breadth. Then if it is stab wound, it has depth has to maintain, and at what exact position of the body has to be noted with reference to some anatomical landmarks like the midline or bony structure or a joint or a navel or a nipple should be mentioned. For example, there is a 6 centimeter into 4 centimeter abrasion on forehead of right side, just 2 centimeter above right right eyebrow. So that's how you can write 6 centimeter to 4 centimeter abrasion on right side of the forehead, about 2 centimeter above the right eyebrow. It indicates the landmark. So the right eyebrow will be the landmark. So it will know the exact position of the wound. Technical terms should be avoided as much as possible, and simpler terms has to be used. Next is we have to describe whether that injury is a simple or grievous wound. So in past videos we have discussed about grievous wound, which includes the 8 points like emasculation, privation of eye, ear, disfiguration of face, etc. That has to be, you have to note down whether those injuries are whether the injury which happened are simple or grievous. Against each injury, it has to be noted whether it is simple, grievous or dangerous. The simple or grievous, the injured person must be kept under observation, and if the nature of particular injury cannot be made out, the time of examination, we can take the X-ray examination for fracture of bone dislocation. Then we have to note down what weapon has inflicted. So we have to make the weapon. So here you can just you have to write whether it is a sharp weapon or blunt weapon, or it is a heavy weapon or light weapon. You should not mention any type of weapon, like it was a rampuri knife, it was an axe, or it was a chopper. You have to just mention whether it was a blunt weapon or a sharp weapon, or like a heavy sharp weapon, heavy blunt weapon, like that. You never mention the name of a weapon. So if any, sometimes in case of examination, weapons may be also be sent for examination. In that cases, you have to note down the examine for presence of blood marks, stains or hairs to it, and should be returned to the police for the in sealed manner for examination. So any weapon has to mention, and this is helpful in cases like when cross examination, a lawyer may present to you weapon, and if he asks whether this is weapon caused, and whether the duty of the doctor is that you have to just mention that the injury has been caused by heavy blunt weapon. This may be the weapon, but may not be the weapon. So never you have to commit that the weapon, this was the weapon caused by that injury. Foreign body present on the wound, like pieces of glass or splinter of a wound or broken point of a knife, should all be kept inside, should be preserved for which will be helpful for identifying weapon. Next part of injury report is whether the weapon was dangerous or simple or not, has to be noted down. So any dangerous weapon is any instrument we use for shooting, stabbing or cutting or any instrument which is used as a weapon of offense which can likely to cause death. This also includes anything like a gas or poisonous item is also included a dangerous weapon. So anything which is used for shooting, stabbing or cutting, or any instrument which is used as a weapon of offense is a dangerous weapon. That has to be mentioned. So if simple a pen can also become a dangerous weapon if it is stabbed inside the eye and if it pierces some major arteries. Last, the remarks. So remarks mainly includes whether the injury requires some extra examination or this whether the patient is conscious or unconscious. Also, the age of injury has to be mentioned in that. If it is only possible to give approximate type. So many times the person may come freshly, but sometimes the patient may come later day, and that time the examination that time you have to mention the age of injuries. So abrasions, fresh injuries, after a few days it may becomes blackened, crust may be found. In contusions, color changes are clearly found that can be very helpful for estimating the age of the contusions. Lastly, some points which has to be kept in mind. When a victim of suicide, homicide or accident dies in hospital, the medical officer should report to the matter of the police immediately. When the dead body is brought to the hospital, injuries should never be examined. It should be sent for postmortem examination, and the doctor who is doing postmortem will note the injuries. The report, at the last of the report should always be signed by medical practitioner along with date, name, full name, registration number, qualification, designation, and current employment where he is working. So then only the complete report will be completed. So looking at the pro forma, so first, like for example, if there is a first one example is injury, as I mentioned, there is an abrasion on forehead, as I mentioned, size of the injury 6 centimeter into 4 centimeter, situation over the right side of forehead, about 2 centimeter above right eyebrow. So that has to mention type of injury, whether it's simple or grievous. And one more thing, I made a mistake, never mention the shortcuts. You have to always write the full forms. Type of injury, simple or grievous. Abrasion is usually heals immediately, so it is a simple injury. Then kind of weapon, blunt weapon. So blunt weapon causes abrasions. Age of injury, if it is fresh bleeding less than 6 hours, you can mention. The remarks, nothing has to mention in the remarks in the abrasions. So this is how the typically the injury report has to be mentioned. So these are my references. Thank you.